I call myself the accidental planner, but I work for Finit. Strange name. It's a finance IT consulting firm, so that kind of will explain the name. The company's been in business for about 16 years. I was their ninth employee, so I've been there for 13 years now. So it's been really nice to see the company grow and really be part of that family and how it's developed and how the culture there is developed as well.
And what do you do for them?
Well, the title is actually Manager of Corporate Event Strategy. So we've had a few different ones. So that particular title now was really to start showing exactly the thought that goes in behind the events that we produce internally for our staff and also externally for clients as well. So it's a really cool way to say, I'm a meeting and event planner. I believe 6 years now, 5 or 6 years. I first discovered MPI when I was looking to get more education. I had been planning and realized that this was truly going to be a career for me with Finit. I love the organization and wanted to make sure that I was putting in place best practices. So my very first WEC was in San Francisco, and I've been to every one since then.
Wow.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love WEC. The educational content is fantastic. The networking is wonderful, but it's really it's a great place for folks like myself, who this is my career choice at this point in time, and I just want to continue to soak up all the new and latest and greatest different best practices and things that are coming along, and being able to share that as well every year. Absolutely. There's different content. There's emerging content and things that are available. So I think when I first started, I was really honing in on a lot of the basics, contract negotiation and things like that. Getting a little bit more into the financial aspects of meeting planning and things along those lines. But now I look at event design. I love to see what the latest trends in F&B are and how I can utilize those types of things. I've done personal career growth takeaways as well, becoming more organized and different tips and tricks on things like that. So I come away with something new every single year, and if it's something that's not new, I find something that's going to help me improve upon something that I'm already doing. Oh my goodness. If it's a financial thing that's there and it's something that you need to persuade your employer, or if you're an independent, there's so much opportunity there. So there's continuing education hours that you can get if you're going for your CMP, or if you need more education hours, to continue with your CMP and to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. Networking is fantastic. I mean, you're going to immediately find people who do what you do. You're in that room, and there's something about being in a room with people who understand your pain points, and being able to share ideas. There's so much value there, not just in the educational takeaways, but in the relationships that you build and the conversations that you have. I've even found that the conversations that I have with people, not necessarily within the actual sessions, but folks that I'm sitting around in general session, or that I'm sitting next to having a meal, those conversations have been just as valuable, where we share ideas. Oh, yeah. So if we're going to speak, directly towards the content with the diversity and inclusion session, absolutely. That's an example of what I get out of WC, is these ideas that we take a topic, and because we all have similar jobs but all at the same time are very different, we share ideas, we bounce experiences off of one another. This has been my experience, well, I experienced something different, and we can share ideas and things like that. So being able to have that, a format and an area to where we can have those types of conversations and really and Jesse as the facilitator today had even said that this is a safe space to share those ideas, that we can bring them out. It's not something that we can't discuss, because being able to have those discussions and conversations with one another on topics like diversity and inclusion, what that does is it allows us to improve upon what we're already doing, and we can take that back and we can implement that into the meetings and events that we're developing. So coming away from this, if it's not something you thought about before, now you have an awareness of it. And I think having an awareness is really the first step in implementing diversity and inclusion practices. You have to have an awareness that that's even important, and that's something that we should be thinking about. So no matter where you are in that area of developing your meetings and events, if you're somebody who's been thinking about it for a while, or you're just starting, when you look at this type of content, I think it's a value for anybody on where you are in that stage of development with your events. So the goal that I put in my participant manual is it needs to be part of the template that I use to plan an event. So I need to now, that has to be part of the process. It's not that, oh, I know I've included, some things on differing abilities, and I know that I need to do certain types of meeting room sets or dietary requirements. So some of the basic things that we probably do off the top of our head as we're planning, I need that to be part of everything. It doesn't matter what size event, it just needs to be another column. Am I checking those boxes? Have I really thought it through to make sure that every aspect of the event that I planned, I can, before I implement it, that I'm now able to say, is everybody going to feel comfortable in this set? Have I forgotten anything? Have I looked at, whether it's the audio or whether it's differing sets to allow people of different comfort levels, whether they're sitting in a chair or they're sitting at a table. These are the types of things that I need to think of to make sure that everybody has a wonderful experience at my events. So now I want to incorporate the things that we talked about in our session today. It just needs to be another part of that planning template, that those are the considerations that I'm making as I develop my events.
But why is that important?
I think if you want to deliver a great experience to attendees, that's truly what makes it important, is the attendee experience and how they come away. You don't want people to come to your events and not feel as though they were part of it. You want them to have a takeaway. You want them to be able to say, hey, that really spoke to me. I felt part of that event. So I think that's where the importance lies when you're thinking of diversity or you're thinking of inclusion, and we look at that in different, it's so broad. There's so much that goes into diversity and inclusion, and it's not just the few boxes that we check off. There's so much more to it. Learning styles, and whether someone's an introvert or an extrovert, and just differing needs as far as quiet spaces versus louder space. There's just so much that goes into it. So as we take a look at some of the things that we discussed today, that's the type of checkpoints that I'm talking about with that template. Being able to make sure that I'm taking those types of things into consideration so that my attendees, when they leave the event, they feel like that they were included and that they have, that it was of value to them and that it actually spoke to them as well.
Perfect. Let's talk about business value of meetings. Tell me about that course. What were your feelings? What were your takeaways?
I felt empowered after I took that. So I took that particular course. I did the online version in December of 2018, and at the end of it, really kind of taking a look at some of the information that we were given and going into it with formulating goals and really drilling down on what is the takeaway and how are we going to get there, and what is that path from beginning to end, and understanding that it also doesn't necessarily have to happen in one event. This may be a process, but really goal development. And it is something now when I have those conversations with our C-suite, when I'm having conversations with directors who are presenting training sessions. And I had this conversation just last week. We are not going to implement another training session with let's try this. Let's see what it is that we want to accomplish before we put it into place, before you develop the content, before you figure out how many days this should be. What is the end result that we want to see? And that's what I really took away from that particular training, is I feel empowered to push back. Not just take, oh, we're going to have an event, and I go and I create the framework of that and execute it. My execution is going to be so much better if I understand exactly what the endpoint is supposed to be, and I can work towards that. I can better develop what my meeting room sets should look like. I can better develop what social events tie to it if I know what the end result is supposed to be, and really being able to feel like I am empowered to be part of that conversation and really push for it. Because I think that if I push for it, utilizing some of the conversations that we had within that business values training, I think that that's just going to enhance what we do and allow me to continue to produce successful events, but really taking success to another level because I was able to reach an end goal that was defined in the very beginning. I think my confidence level is higher than it was before I took that. I've actually noticed that the more that I stand up for what the framework of an event should look like, coming away from one that we just did and now starting the plan for one that's going to take place in the fall, I think there's a little bit more of an understanding at the director and partner C-suite level. She knows what she's talking. There's a reason. How can somebody push back on what is your goal? What do you want to accomplish? How do you push back on saying, oh no, we don't need to do that? Like, yes, that is really important. So that's now part of the process. And my having the confidence in being able to do that has already started allowing me to really have a voice at that table. Not just being the recommender, but truly being that decision maker on how these different sessions are developed and what it looks like and what our attendees should experience. Having that information that was gained from the business value and being able to implement those recommendations, definitely on framework and definitely on formulating goals and what the end result should look like. I just definitely see that that's really going to just really play a role in everything that I'm doing now going forward, that's the first thing you start with. And that came directly from that training session.
So you're more than selecting rooms, ordering meals.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, for every event. It's my role is not site selection, just site selection. I mean, I'm a one-person planner for our organization. But the events, because I'm a corporate planner, the events have become very much a part of our culture. So if we're going to make the investment to bring the entire staff together, or we're going to make the investment to bring the entire staff and their guests together, there's so much opportunity there for touch points and for takeaways that you can put value on those things. So for example, the type of training that we did at the last event, we incorporated a lot of collaboration with that. It was more collaborative training, and it allowed people to really take a look at what their learning styles are and where they fit into teams. So that can even tie back into the diversity and inclusion that we're talking about with this type of training, being able to bring your team together and promote different training options like that to allow people to learn a little bit more about themselves and their colleagues. They can take that back to a project and they will already know, I'm a good trainer, whereas I'm a really good detail-oriented, pull all the data together person. So being able to do different things like this, you're pulling in business values and you're pulling in diversity and inclusion, all of those pieces fit when I'm developing now the different types of events that we do, and I can make recommendations on how that should look and what the takeaways could actually be from that.
Fabulous. So tell me about emergency preparation, emergency prep meeting, and
yeah, how we tie all of those things together. So the emergency preparedness training was one that I took on site with MPI in 2017. I had taken that training, and what was really nice is that it actually opened the conversation within our organization, and being able to at least start the conversation. We're not where I would like to be, but I have the framework and the knowledge to where we can continue to build upon those things. It's also helped me in having conversations with venues to make sure that some of those things are in place when we have the conversations for pre-conference meetings and things like that. What is your emergency plan? What do you already have in place? What can you tell me? I do know that you can't tell me everything, but tell me a little bit about what it is that you have in place in the event of an emergency. It's allowed me to implement things that are non-negotiable with me when I plan an event for our staff. I make sure we have we have first responders on site. They don't need to be mix and mingling, but I make sure that that's there because you don't want to have an event and you want to make sure that you have access to someone who is crisis trained. If someone has a medical emergency, if someone has an allergic reaction, or they have, goodness, you don't want a heart attack, but these things will happen. And to be able to have a first responder there, ready at the call for your group, I think is very, very important. It's important for security. It's important for your attendees, and that has definitely become part of what we do. At first, I recall the first time that I had some first responders there, and kind of off to the side, and my attendees were like, "What? Do we really need that?" And now it is very welcome because there's a certain amount of comfort that's there to know that we're taking care of them, and that's important, and that did come out of emergency preparedness. So we have a long way to go, but there are things that I've been able to implement with our events that have definitely made a difference thus far.